Hi-Fi Man, Audeze, Audio-Technica, Sennheiser, and Beyerdynamic suck the oxygen out of any room where headphones are being discussed. There's often little space left to mention gear from smaller, lesser-known companies. That's unfortunate, since we can find great stuff from surprising places. Today, we're going to take a look at a premium headphone from a barely recognized company that sells mostly cheap headphones. I'm talking about the SoundMagic HP1000. This is a $300 headphone that is currently discounted on Amazon. Let's see if SoundMagic's flagship headphone has anything interesting to offer. You will need to navigate to SoundMagic's Chinese website to get any information about this headphone. The European SoundMagic website does not even mention the HP1000. SoundMagic claims that the HP1000 is a closed-back headphone with an open sense of hearing, whatever that is supposed to convey. They promise, quote, ultra-wide soundstage, deep bass, natural voicing, and clear treble. The HP1000 comes with 53mm dynamic drivers, but nothing in the marketing suggests these are proprietary. SoundMagic says that the HP1000 has true hi-fi sound. According to them, this headphone reproduces lifelike audio, is professionally tuned to delight music lovers, and brings out the purest sound to touch the heart. So warming. There's no frequency response graph for us to determine how this headphone might generally sound. The HP1000 looks like an unpretentious, unremarkable headphone. It is designed not to stand out, which is kind of a breath of fresh air if you ask me. The HP1000 is built of aluminum and plastic. The headband is aluminum, as are the yokes. The ear cups are hard plastic. The ear pads have thick, soft padding, though this is not memory foam. The headband padding is soft but not thick. SoundMagic says they use sheepskin leather on the headband, but are unclear whether sheepskin was used for the ear pads. The ear pads are replaceable. They can be easily pulled off. You should be able to find a wide variety of replacement options. The HP1000 comes with a hard carrying case, a small pouch to store cables, and 2 cables. The cables are proprietary. The connection is something out of left field, and I have never seen it before. I cannot find replacement cables for the HP1000 on SoundMagic's website or through a Google search. Nevertheless, the cables are well made. Unfortunately, there are no spare ear pads in the box. As for comfort, the HP1000 is surprisingly comfortable. The ear pads sit around my ears. Despite being closed back, I can still hear noises around me. This is not a sound isolation headphone after all. The HP1000 has about average clamping force, no more than the HD6XX in my opinion. The padding mitigates any long-term discomfort. I can wear the HP1000 for about 3 hours before needing a break. Overall, the HP1000 is a well-made headphone. The choice to keep things minimalist was, I think, a wise one. The headphone is sturdy, yet comfortable. It comes with good accessories. The proprietary cable might be difficult to replace. I wish SoundMagic had included spare ear pads, as that would have elevated the experience and one-upped the so-called premium audiophile companies. To test the HP1000, I used it with various devices. This includes the Burson 3XR, RME 80i2 DAC, K9 Pro, EcoZerta ITM03, and the Low2 Paw 6000. I listened to my test playlist on Amazon Music HD and used the stock accessories. The HP1000 is not difficult to drive. A simple dongle DAC such as the Zerta will provide plentiful amplification. SoundMagic says that the HP1000 has deep bass. My tests indicate that this headphone has a sub-bass roll-off but slightly elevated mid-bass. In Mountains by Hans Zimmer, there's a rumble from the beginning, which builds into a crescendo. The HP1000 presented this detail, but only after I increased volume quite a bit and well beyond what I typically listen to. The Allo S4X, in comparison, presented greater bass rumble at lower volume. Transients was about the same between the HP1000 and the S4X, however. When the crescendo hit, the HP1000 made the organ meld with the other instruments. The rolling thunder effect was audible, but distant. The S4X had greater rendition of this detail as well. When the vocals chimed in, they rose from the background until they were shoulder to shoulder with the instruments. In Conquer by Overwork, there's a rolling marble sound at the beginning. This pans from right to left to center. The HP1000 presented this sound and the panning. There are multiple drums in this track, and the HP1000 rendered them all similarly. In other words, the various drums had hard impact, and each drum strike heavily melded with the next. Compared to the S4X, the HP1000 seemed to have slightly sharper and harder drum hits, and the S4X appeared to provide a little bit more clarity among the instruments. I listened to several hip-hop songs including Pure Water, New Patek, Reel It In, and Uproar. On each occasion, the HP1000 presented the sub bass, but it sounded distant. The subwoofer always sounded like it was at the other end of a medium-sized room. The vocals were about 2 steps ahead of the instruments and retained their sparkle. The drums were slightly louder than the sub bass. I listened to my Sicario playlist. I use these songs to determine if there's any audible bass distortion. Traversing from low to high volumes, I could not hear any distortion. Overall, the HP1000 seems to have a sub-bass roll-off. It is not dramatic, nothing like the Austrian audio headphones for example, but it is something you might hear, or not hear. Adding more power to the drivers made no difference in this regard. Consequently, using the Burson after the RME did not render more sub-bass. Mid-bass seems to have a slight emphasis. The bass has no better than average clarity. SoundMagic does not say anything about the mids response. My tests indicate that the mids are forward, but not sibilant. In Orla Gartland's song Why Am I Like This, there's natural vocal grain and sibilance mixed into the track. The HP1000 presented both, but emphasized neither. The presentation of these two details was similar to what I heard on the Aventone planar. Orla's voice was 1 to 2 steps ahead of the instruments. The drums were slightly louder than the other instruments, but did not drown out the vocals. There was some melding among all instruments. In Want You Back by Haim, the HP1000 again showed that it does not emphasize vocal sibilance. This was similar to what I heard on the Aventone planar. At 8 seconds into the track, the primary singer says the word "we" and drags it out, making it sound gravelly. The HP1000 rendered this detail. There are 2 backup vocalists, one in either channel. The HP1000 initially presented all 3 vocalists clearly with their individual tonalities. However, when the instruments played at maximum, the backup vocalists melded into one voice. The drums, bass, guitar, and piano all melded. The drums generally were marginally louder than the rest. The vocals remained 1 to 2 steps ahead of the other elements. In superposition by Young the Giant, the HP1000 presented the ukulele, drums, and bass. The drums were a little bit louder than the other instruments. All instruments melded their notes together. The primary male vocalist was 2 steps ahead of the instruments. His vocal sibilance was not emphasized. There's a backup vocalist whose voice is layered beneath the primaries. Most headphones and IEMs cannot reveal this subtle detail. The HP1000 could not either. Between 1 minute and 10 and 1 minute and 20 seconds, there are sharp intakes of breaths. The HP1000 presented this detail. Overall, the HP1000 has forward mids. Vocals stand 1 to 2 steps ahead of instruments. However, there is no emphasis of vocal sibilance for either male or female artists. There is about average clarity in this region. SoundMagic says that the HP1000 has clear treble. My tests indicate that the headphone has a slight upper treble emphasis. In Scherzo for X-Wings, the HP1000 presented the brass and horns clearly. Their nasally signatures were easily audible. However, the higher pitched notes seemed a bit emphasized. This was a little bit louder than what I heard on the Aventone planar, but similar to the Alo S4X. The timpani was frankly underemphasized, but audible. The HP1000 has some width, but no depth or verticality. In other words, some instruments seemed further out into the wings, but none sounded like they were deeper into the room, and no sounds came from above or below. In Flight from the City, the HP1000 made the piano sound like it was about 6 feet away. Its bassy notes were slightly underemphasized, and each note melded with the next. The cello was as loud as the piano and sounded, for a lack of better terminology, smooth. Both instruments melded their tonalities. I could hear the pops and sizzles and electric buzzing effects. I heard the creaking of wood on the pianist's bench and the shifting of the cello's weight. In Take 5 of the Dave Brubeck Quartet, the HP1000 rendered the piano in the right, drums in the left, saxophone center, and the bass 1 step behind. All instruments melded their tonalities, but none seemed veiled in the mix. The saxophone was the loudest instrument in the group. Its higher-pitched notes were marginally emphasized, similar to what I heard on the Alo S4X. The cymbals are struck at different positions, which should result in varying tonalities. the HP1000 made each cymbal strike sound the same. Overall, the HP1000 seems to have slightly elevated upper treble, but otherwise a fairly neutral rendition. I don't know what SoundMagic means by clear treble, but I did not find that the HP1000 had muffled treble, if that makes any difference. SoundMagic does not say how the HP1000 should cope with detail retrieval. My tests indicate that this headphone has about above average detail at best. Creaking of wood, shifting of a cello's weight, sharp intakes of breaths, multiple vocalists, twangs of guitar strings, nasally signatures of brass and horns, these types of details are clear. But nuanced details like layered vocals and varying tonalities of cymbal strikes are not presented. For a more quantitative test, I use the song New Light by Kazuki. This track has layers of details including the sound of children playing, wind, rustling of grass, synth, piano, and footsteps. I count the number of steps I can hear in the first 60 seconds. The Sennheiser HD800S presents 22 footsteps, the Focal Clear, 18 footsteps, the Austrian Audio HiX65, 16 to 17 footsteps, the HiX55 presents 16 footsteps, the HiX15 and X25BT present 13 to 14. The hifi Mansundara, Avantone Planar, Sifka Phoenix, and Beyerdynamic DT1990 each present 10 to 11 footsteps. The Monolith M1070, M1570, Sifka Robin, and Ultrasone Pro 1480i all provide 8 to 9. The audeze LCD2 Closed and LCD2 Classic each provide 7 to 8 footsteps. The older M1060C provides 7 footsteps. The audeze LCD1 and HD6XX present 6 to 7 footsteps. The Neumann NDH20 presents 5 to 6 footsteps. The HP1000 rendered 7 to 8 footsteps. On my scale of detail retrieval, the HD6XX and LCD1 are the average performers. Any headphone that provides more or less detail is judged accordingly. So the NDH20 would be considered below average and the hifi Mansundara as above average. Here, based on my scale, I think the HP1000 has slightly above average detail retrieval. SoundMagic claims that the HP1000 has ultra-wide soundstage. I'm not convinced they actually compared this to anything. I do not think that the HP1000 has expansive soundstage and certainly would not say it is ultra-wide. In my opinion, the soundstage here is slightly above average. I have a soundstage scale. Once again, I use the HD6XX and LCD1 as my average performers. Headphones that have more or less soundstage than these two are judged accordingly. The audeze Mobius and all Beats headphones have claustrophobic soundstage. The NDH20 and ATH-M60X have below average soundstage. The HD6XX and LCD1 have average soundstage. The Sifka Phoenix, Emotiva GR1, and Ultrasone Pro 1480i have average to maybe above average soundstage, depending on the particular recording. The hifi Mansundara, Avantone Planar, Austrian Audio HiX55 and X65, and LCD2 Classic have above average soundstage. The hifi Mandiva has wide soundstage. And the HD800S has super wide soundstage, or you could call it ultra wide. In my opinion, the HP1000 has soundstage that is a little wider than the HD6XX and LCD1, but not as wide as the Sundara. Obviously, this is wider than some other close-back headphones, but it's not quite as impressive as SoundMagic claims. SoundMagic does not provide specific information for you to judge how these headphones might sound. You're left with very vague, emotionally driven statements, and those are not helpful at all. But having experienced the HP1000 and putting it through the same tests I perform on every headphone and IEM, I think I can agree with at least one thing that SoundMagic's marketing says. They claim that the HP1000 has a balanced sound. I think that is the correct summary. The HP1000 has an audible sub-bass roll-off. While not significant, it is noticeable when compared to a neutral headphone. The mid-bass, however, is marginally emphasized. The mids are forward, but vocals are not sibilant. Vocals stand 1 to 2 steps ahead of instruments. The treble is seemingly neutral until the upper treble, where there is a slight upward deviation. This emphasis is no greater than what I hear on the Oriolus S4X. The HP1000 has slightly above average detail and soundstage. In my opinion, if you prefer vocal-centric music, then the HP1000 might cater to you. If you like bass emphasis, then this headphone really is not designed to do that. To better understand how a headphone might appeal to you, we need to do A/B comparisons. That's the only way to separate what's actually new from what you already have. Here, we will compare the HP1000 against the Apos Audio Caspian and the Sifka SV21, or also called the Robin. For these comparisons, I used the stock accessories. I plugged each headphone into a passive A/B switch, which was also plugged into my Army ADI2 DAC. I listened to my test playlist on Amazon Music HD and tried to volume match. The Caspian has a quite different bass rendition compared to the HP1000. The Caspian has a bass emphasis, while the HP1000 has a sub-bass roll-off. Mid-bass has greater emphasis on the Caspian as well. Separation and clarity in the bass region is clearer on the HP1000. Both headphones have forward mids. However, the Caspian has a moderate emphasis in sibilants, while the HP1000 tends to keep that detail close to neutral. The Caspian has greater bass bleed into the mids. Vocals stand further apart from instruments on the HP1000. Treble is different. The Caspian has an upper treble roll-off, while the HP1000 has a slight emphasis. The HP1000 has a bit more clarity and separation in this region. The Caspian and HP1000 have similar detail retrieval. In my new light test, the Caspian rendered 7 to 8 footsteps. The HP1000 has wider soundstage than the Caspian. The SV21 has a noticeably different bass response. Both sub-bass and mid-bass are elevated, while the HP1000 has a sub-bass roll-off. Drum strikes are a little harder and sharper on the SV21. Separation and clarity in this region is slightly greater on the HP1000. The mids are forward on both headphones. The SV21 has a sibilance emphasis for both male and female artists. The HP1000 does not. Vocals are a bit closer to the ears on the SV21. Clarity in this region is a bit more obvious on the SV21. Both headphones have a treble emphasis. The SV21 has a slightly greater push compared to the HP1000. Cymbals sound louder in a mix on the SV21. The SV21 has greater detail retrieval. In my new light test, the SV21 rendered 9 to 10 footsteps. The HP1000 has slightly wider soundstage than the SV21. One thing was patently obvious when I compared all three headphones. They all sound drastically different from each other. You simply cannot confuse one for the other. While they might share some attributes, that does not mean they perform the same way. Ultimately, you may like one or none of these headphones. Fortunately, you have options, and you don't need to spend multiple factors more money for Audeze, Vocal, or Dan Clark. Far cheaper headphones might provide the sound you're looking for. When you get right down to it, there is no correlation between price and sound quality. It's simply a false narrative that a lot of companies and audiophiles keep propagating. There is no need to spend several hundreds of dollars on gear, especially if you can find happiness for cheaper. This is why I love trying affordable gear or stuff from small brands. Monoprice, Bass Audio, Allo Audio, and Sifka are just a handful of excellent brands that offer lots of value with a wide range of sound signatures. I already reviewed the SoundMagic P55 several months ago and found it was a good headphone at a reasonable price. SoundMagic has 3 headphones that I know of, some IEMs, and a portable amp DAC. So these guys are not new to the audiophile game. The HP1000, their flagship headphone, might seem unworthy from a distance, but upon closer inspection, you might find elements to your liking. This headphone has a balanced sound signature, one that caters to vocals rather than bass. It has a sub-bass roll-off, forward mids without sibilant vocals, and a marginal upper treble emphasis. The HP1000 has above-average detail and soundstage. At $300, this headphone does have plenty of competition both above and below. Does it make enough of a case for itself? Yes, I think so. The HP1000 has very good build, good accessories, and a sound signature that many might appreciate. You can find more neutral, more bassy, more clear, more warm-sounding headphones. In fact, there are headphones that address these things, from the AKG K371 to the Austrian Audio X15 to the Allo S4X to the Avantone Planar, and many others. The question is not whether the HP1000 is the best headphone, because that's a nonsensical argument. Instead, the actual question is whether this headphone might be right for you. And that is something only you can answer. All I can say is that the HP1000 is a worthy headphone as long as you understand its capabilities, just like any other piece of gear.